Now, that turning point for me, I was 23 years old. I'm on a bus on the way to the office one morning and I tune into a conversation behind me. And it's some teenagers, late teens, talking about a new programming language. Now, I immediately knew two things. Number one, if I didn't learn that new programming language, one day one of these kids would be competing with me for a job and I'd lose out, right? Well, nothing unusual about that, but the thing that really hit me the hardest, I had no desire to learn another programming language. Ladies and gentlemen, I had no passion for my profession, and I knew right then if I couldn't get that passion back, I would have a very tough time of it. Well, I never did get the passion back. I really wasn't that interested, because the truth is I've always been more interested in people development than software development. So about 2 years later, I embarked on a completely new career journey. I went to university. I studied psychology, anthropology, philosophy. I became a business psychologist, which, by the way, takes 7 years to qualify. 7 years. I could have learned a new programming language in 7 weeks. What's the difference? The passion, the interest, okay? That was the why for me. So let me tell you about what I do and why I do it. Imagine this. You've just won a prize, and that's your prize. They bring it to your house, they put it on your driveway, and you look at this beautiful machine and you think, what? What do you think?
Does it come in blue?
Does it come in blue? Some people are never happy, Stephen. Does it come in blue?
How did Gary afford it?
How did Gary? So you obviously want to play with this new toy. You want to take it out, right? So you take it out on the road, first gear, second gear. You just feel the incredible power as that engine's opening up. And you're already getting up towards the speed limit and you haven't even shifted out of second gear. And then there's a problem. You cannot get into the next gear. Now, how frustrating would that be? Because you know this thing can do more, but you just can't quite get to that next gear. Have you ever felt like that in your life, that you know there's more that you could do or more that you could be, but you just can't quite find that next gear, but you know it's there? Have you ever had that experience? And do you know how many organisations have that experience? They know there's more they can do, and I heard these kind of words this morning. You know, you guys are doing fantastically well, and yet there's this big question is, how can we do more? How can we be even better, both individually and collectively? Well, that's what I do. I do that with individuals, corporate professionals. I do it with organisations. A lot of my clients are very large corporates, big names you've heard of. Sometimes they're smaller companies. But the same question exists. How can we find that next gear? Because we heard it this morning, just an extra 2% on a certain measure can make a massive difference. Why do I do that? Because I know how frustrated I've been through my life when I've not been able to break through to that next level. And I know how frustrated people get about that. And over 25 years, I've learned a lot of keys to unlock to help people get to that next level. Now, here's the interesting thing. Those two emotions, excitement and fear, are actually really close cousins. Did you know that? Physiologically, they are the same. The heart rate, the breathing patterns, the adrenaline, it's the same experience except for what? What's the difference? Sorry? Mindset. What you say to yourself about what's going on. Some people get on a roller coaster, they have the adrenaline, and they say, oh, this is brilliant. And other people go, get me off here, I never want to do this again. Probably a bit more like me. So that's the only difference, and it's been proved experimentally. Now, not only is excitement and fear, not only are they close cousins, but each of them serve us in really important ways. And this is how it works. You see, every moment of your life, you are surrounded by two things at all times. You always have around you, whether you see them or not, opportunities. And once again, this morning we heard that word. There are opportunities. This business is very good at finding new opportunities. And at the same time, there are always, whether you see them or not, there are dangers. That's why we have compliance, to head those things off. Okay? Do you like that plug there, Rob? That's good. So And that's true for us on a personal level. Do you get that? Do you realise that in your life right now, whether you see them or not, there are opportunities and there are dangers? Yeah? So how do these emotions work for us? Well, and against us. Let's have a look at fear first of all. There's a brilliant quote. Screen's meant to be off. There's a brilliant quote by Tony Robbins. Let fear be your counsellor, not your jailer. Let fear be your counsellor, not your jailer. It's a good quote, isn't it? Have you ever done that? Let fear be your jailer. You know, stopped you doing something that you think, oh, we should have done that. Have you ever done that? Yeah. I can't tell you how many times I have. But I will tell you about one time when I did. So, what's my point? Like all things in life, it's about getting balance right. Okay? We need excitement. And I saw a lot of it in the room this morning. We need excitement because it gives us the vision to see the opportunities and the energy to go after them. Very important. But we also need a healthy dose of fear. Not too much, but enough to keep us alert to the dangers. Are you with me so far? Does that make sense? By the way, if you're expecting to learn a lot of new stuff, you're going to be bitterly disappointed because a lot of what I'm sharing with you is common sense, right? Seriously. So my role is simply to remind you of stuff that you kind of already know, or maybe give you a slightly different angle on something you already know. That's the value I hope to bring today. I'm going to talk now about career derailment. For those of you who've never heard the term, career derailment is when your career is on a track, looks like everything's going very well and something goes wrong. Okay, so you have a situation where you don't progress as you expected to, or things go horribly wrong. And that happens a lot for people. Big organisations have talent programs where they want to take these high potential people and develop them so they'll rise up through the organisation. And some of the people go on to be very successful and some don't, and no one can kind of work out why. Why is it that these bright, young, ambitious things don't quite achieve their potential? Well, there was a major study done over many years, and it asked that question. And they came up with a number of factors, but the two biggest by far are the ones I'm going to share with you. And the reason I'm sharing them with you is because they have relevance to every single one of us, wherever we are in our career. And they have relevance to our business as well. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the inability to develop or adapt. Now, when I first saw that, I thought that doesn't make sense. We're talking about intelligent people who've already achieved quite a bit. Why? They must have that ability. But here's what happens, and we can understand it by looking at how we learn. Now, some of you will have seen this model. It's Maslow's model of learning. So we all start out with what I call a blind spot. We don't know that we can't do something. When I was a kid growing up on a farm in Australia, I didn't know that I couldn't ice skate. Why not?
No ice.
Oh, there's ice. It's in the freezer, in the bucket with the beers in it for the barbie, right? Yeah, but you're right, no ice. I lived on the edge of a lake growing up. That never froze over. The closest ice rink, probably 200 miles away, right? I didn't know it existed, so I didn't know I could do it. But this is an interesting point. Even if I'd seen it on television and watched expert doing it, I might not have known I couldn't do it. Why not? Yeah, well, I've never tried, that's true, but what would make me think I could do it too? Yes, and if I stepped onto the ice, would I potentially expect that I could do it as well as them? And I might, yes, because those, here's the point, those people make it look what? Easy. So we can have the illusion somebody else is doing, oh, I can do that. So in very broad terms, here's what it can look like. A young professional, which we all start out as a young professional, we're learning stuff. And we get noticed because of these various attributes and qualities. And one of the interesting ones is we have an intense desire to prove ourselves. And that's based on reality, because at this point, we don't have a long track record. We don't have a long CV. So we work really hard to prove ourselves. We start out with a specialty strength. But if we want to progress our career and perhaps move into supervisory, leadership, management type of positions, we have to start moving towards what we call a mature professional, who now broadens out their toolkit. And interestingly, if you look at every bullet point on the right-hand side, it's 180 degrees from everything on the left-hand side. That's not to say you won't sometimes do stuff on the left-hand side, but you can't get by just doing the stuff on the left-hand side if you want to be a leader. Now, I had personal experience of this. When I moved to the UK, after a few nervous weeks, I did get a job. In fact, I got a fantastic job, and that's why we ended up staying here. I joined a company called the Change Partnership. At the time, it was the preeminent executive coaching business in UK, Europe, and probably the world. I felt so privileged to be part of this team. I was one of the younger members of the team, having just turned 40, and it was an exciting time. And then one day I got some feedback. So a colleague of mine said, "Peter, when we have an offsite with the team, you sometimes say things that don't really need to be said." Now, Robin's a great guy, and he wasn't being harshly critical. He was just making an observation. But I took it really hard. Have you ever been in a meeting and you're sitting there and somebody's talking and they're talking and they're talking and you're thinking, okay, well, we got the point, but you're talking too much or it's not relevant? Have you ever been in a meeting where that's gone on? You don't want to all nod because you're all in meetings together, you know. So. No, none of us do that. But here's the big question. Have you ever done that? Have you ever done that? And how would you know? You see, it never occurred to me, and it worried me that I was doing that. And I thought, well, I don't want my colleagues to be sitting there thinking, I wish he'd shut up, right? So how do I stop that? What are my alternatives? One is to what? Never speak. But then you're not adding any value, are you? So I came up with an idea. I said, right, before I open my big fat mouth, I'm going to ask myself a simple question. Is my primary reason for speaking justification? Is it about looking good? Is it about me? Look, everyone, I'm clever. I deserve to be here. I'm great. Right? Is it that? Or is my primary reason for speaking contribution? Is it about adding value? Is my focus on what's best for the meeting, for the organisation, not just about me and my ego? Now, I've taught this to countless clients who found this really, really valuable. And I'm not saying for a minute I always got it right, but what I can promise you is there are times when I caught myself about to speak and I thought, no, I don't need to say that. Or maybe that person there needs to hear this, but I can speak to them afterwards. So it's reading the meeting. Now, I believe that all of us, every single person in this room, is on the same journey. We want to become more confident, mature and wise. Well, maybe we don't want to be so mature, but we want to be wise and confident. Why do we want that? Why is that helpful? Credibility, yep. Why would that be a good thing, to have confidence and that sort of broader maturity? You feel better. Absolutely, you feel better. Thanks, Carol. Progression. Yeah, more successful. Absolutely, all of those things. Because in my experience, both my personal experience and the experience of having worked with hundreds of clients, when we move left to right, actually things start to get easier. We have more credibility, we have more influence, we relax more. In fact, on the right-hand side, it's what I call the green zone. And you're all human beings, and every one of you is successful because otherwise you wouldn't be in this room. Is that correct? And therefore, I could pretty confidently say that every single one of you in this room has moments or days where you just feel great about yourself, about life, about other people, whatever problems. I know I'll ultimately get through it and handle it. Would that be fair? That you all have that experience time to time? Yeah? Would you like to have more of it? Yeah, me too. Because we're all human and we have days where we get stressed, right? Things get on top of us. We get angry, frustrated. We want to attack other people. We feel like they're attacking us. Would it be fair to say we all have times like that? Yeah. So the trick to having more of the green zone is to work at having less of the red zone. Easy to say, not so easy to do. The other distinction is confidence. In the red zone, we have what I call false confidence. That's where people say, "How you doing?" And you go, "What? Fine, yeah." And you're not. You know it, and possibly they know it. Have you ever come across arrogance? I can almost guarantee if you scratch under the surface, which I have the privilege of doing through my work, underneath the arrogance is a lack of true confidence. People with true confidence don't mind being wrong, making mistakes, owning up to things, saying they don't know the answer. Have you noticed that? And we tend to respect those people more, don't we? We find them easier to work with because there isn't all that prickliness and defensiveness. Am I making sense here? Yeah? So, if there was one quality that underpinned the green zone, it would be this. It's a sense of love and connection. Now, we don't use the L word, do we, much in business? I mean, really, it's a bit fluffy. And yet this morning, dare I say it, I saw that in this room. You know, Craig sort of running that session where there was acknowledgement of various team members and other people in the room were saying, "Yeah, absolutely, they make that work for me, it's fantastic." That's a fantastic thing to see. I work with a lot of companies. I don't see that as often as I'd like, and you guys are doing it, so well done. On the other side of the ledger, fear. I said before it's a good thing, but in my experience we have too much of it too often, all of us, and that's what holds us back. So we need to get better at getting on top of that. We have the communication inside the organisation or team, and who else do we need to be good at communicating with, do you think? Ourselves, absolutely. When I was sitting next to that pretty girl that time, how good was my communication with myself? "Oh, you're ugly, she's out of your league, she wouldn't be interested in you," right? Not helpful. So, communication success. You know what? A lot of people say, we need more communication. I don't think they really mean that. I don't know anyone that wakes up in the morning and has 153 emails to deal with in the morning and says, "Gee, I wish I had 200. Well, unless they were sales orders maybe, right? We don't want more. We want what? Better. We want better communication. Now, sometimes initially it may be more, but we need to get to a place where quality reigns supreme. I got to see this firsthand in my own home 7 years ago. I have two boys. James is 20, Matthew's 14. When Matthew was 7, he came into our bedroom one Monday morning and he said, "I don't want to go to school today." What kid hasn't had that thought? But he doesn't normally say it. So we said, "Well, why not?" And he said, "Oh, I've got a tummy ache." Now, you know when you hear an explanation and you think, it doesn't stack up, right? I know Matthew well enough. I reckon if I'd said, "Matty, no problem, stay home this morning. Oh, by the way, after breakfast, I've got a bit of time. Would you like to have a game of football?" I could almost guarantee he would have said what? Yes, because it wasn't really a tummy ache. So I decided in my wisdom that he's two things. He's lying and he's lazy. He just doesn't want to go to school, and I'm not having it, right? Because I'm bigger than him. So I say, "No, you'll be fine, you're going." He said, "No, it's bad, it's really bad." So this goes on. There's lots of talking, but not much of a result, right? Now, ladies and gentlemen, I teach this stuff. My wife does this stuff. She takes him in his room in his own, sits him down and says, "What's up?" And he goes, "Well, I've got my drumming lesson at the end of the day. I have to leave my class 5 minutes earlier to go down to the drumming room. But the problem is, my teacher's not always ready. So I'm standing in the corridor and I won't know what to say if someone says, 'Matthew, why aren't you in class?'" That was it. Have you ever done that? Made up a story that you couldn't cope with something? That was it. So she sat with him and she said, "Okay, let's talk it through." Came up with strategies. 2 minutes. Tummy ache gone. I was right. Okay? Ladies and gentlemen, that is quality. That's quality. Done it my way. See, I drove him to school that morning and he was singing in the back of the car. Seriously, he was happy. He would have had a great day. Done it my way, how would he have been at school? Worried, stressed. Do you think he would have learned much? Probably not. That's quality. Okay. So coming back to the why, it's so important because it underpins everything that we do. How many people here have a strong sense of purpose in life? Put your hand up if you have a sense of purpose. Okay. Some hands are not going up and that's okay. Maybe it's because you do, but you don't want to put your hand up in case I'm going to say, so, what is yours? Or maybe you're just not 100% sure. Would you be interested in knowing how best to clarify what your purpose is? Would that be of interest to you? Yeah. I've got a very simple little process. I'm not pretending I'm the only person that teaches this stuff, but I came up with this myself because I used to do a lot of outplacement work in Australia, people who'd lost their jobs and they're now back in the marketplace and they're looking for another job. And we'd look at who are you and what can you do and what's out there potentially. And I kind of got a sense of, it really helps to have a sense of purpose because all of your communication coming from purpose is much more effective and it helps you to be much more successful. Passion. This is our source of energy. It's something we feel strongly about. It's something that we are interested in, what we love doing. Do you remember my story? Sitting on that bus realizing that I didn't want to learn another programming language. I had no passion for my profession. It wasn't going to be fun anymore. So passion is really important because that's where our energy comes from. And there's one final piece of the jigsaw. What is a job? What is a business? It's solving a problem. It's meeting a need. And I would say the day there are no problems in the world, come and tell me there's no work. It's not about no work, it's about your ability to meet a particular need. People have problems, they have frustrations, they have pain. The reason you're picking up more and more business is because there are people who are not being looked after very well. Back in Australia, I used to go to a menswear store in Adelaide called Axel Beers, and there was a young guy in that store called Anthony, and Anthony was amazing. He was so switched on, he knew his stuff, he knew all about the clothes and the latest, materials coming in from Italy, or, all the suits. He just knew his stuff. So he had lots of stuff on the left-hand side. He had bags of passion. He loved what he did. And people like me would come in with a need. We would want to buy stuff, and he would meet that and exceed that. I'd go in to buy a suit, and I'd come out with 2 suits, 5 shirts, 3 ties, and I didn't mind because I knew he was looking after me really well. And he'd be the sort of guy who I'd come back, 9, 12 months later, and he'd say, "Oh, Peter, this particular tie will go with that suit you bought last year." And I'm going, "Oh my God, how did you remember that?" Amazing. Now, I moved to the UK. I'm in London, right? Jermyn Street, ever heard of it? Yeah. Right? One of the top, supposedly, menswear places. I'm going down. I'm in the market for a couple of new suits, shirts, etc. Right? I could be potentially spending $2 grand. I was ready to spend $2 grand. I walk into a shop. 2 guys working in the shop. No one else, no other customers. I go in. Guy says, "Can I help you?" I said, "Yeah, I'm looking for some suits." So I try on some suits. And I'm just not, the way they sit just doesn't quite feel right. And he's just looking. He said, "Well, try this one." I'm not sure. He didn't engage with me about the issue or say to me, "Look, that kind of settles down over time," or "You just stooped over, why don't you stand up straight?" I don't know. He didn't engage with me. He figured he's not going to get a sale. I said, "No, I need to think about it." I said, "I'm in the market. I'm looking for some shirts." Do you know what he said to me? Who said that? Have you heard the story? No. Exactly. You've been there, right? They're over there. I kid you not. They're over there. They're over there. He walks back, stands behind the counter with his mate and starts chatting. So I go over, have a quick look, and I thought, this is crap. And I just walked out. $2 grand, just walked out the door. I went up the street to another shop. It was marginally better, but it was never as good as Anthony. And listening to your stories this morning, I'm thinking there's a lot of Anthonys in this business, which is pretty exciting because it's so easy to stand out. Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon. Your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. In other words, unless nobody knows who you are and you're totally invisible, you have a brand. So here's the question. Is that brand what you'd want it to be? Is that brand what you'd want it to be? See, I get to find out a lot about a lot of people's brands. I come into companies, I might work with an individual. I go and talk to people who work with them, their direct reports, their bosses, etc. I find out what their brand is. Often it's not what they intended, which is why you bring the two together. I see it this way. Your brand should be a communication of your purpose. If you're on purpose, everything you do and everything you say should align with that, and that people should be saying about you that you deliver those things. So we're now going full circle back to where we started. This is our theme, or one of the themes today, who you are, why do you do what you do. That's what your brand should be communicating. Your brand promises something valuable, and therefore we hope that you actually deliver that. And the value of your brand is what others say, not what you say, what others say, widely, frequently, consistently.